If you're online today, it's likely that you got a chance to play the Nintendo Wii. Nintendo's 2006 console was in most households I knew and was nearly ubiquitous throughout my whole adolescence. Recently, as I've been going through the process of hacking my Wii to play legally acquired video games, I came across an old thread that once sparked my interest in internet legends. Velvet Blue asked a simple question to the users of the GameWorks forum. What happened during my playthrough of LEGO Indiana Jones? Rather than a simple explanation of a glitch or error on her part, the thread devolves into an exploration of a deeply contained mystery from the early days of the console. Between the digital bricks and abandoned lines of code, something lies in wait. Please note, this is pretty rambly and I kind of lost my point near the end. I don't know what brought this back to me, maybe the cold weather, but I think that it's time I actually put pen to paper on this. Christmas time where I live is not as hallmark as you would expect it to be. Despite what those movies say, most upstate New England towns do not have a nice town square with a big tree. Most are like a highway that stretches a few miles with houses that bump off of it and a Walmart plaza. It's not as depressing as it sounds, but the winter here still has something about it. The hostility of the outside world during the winter makes for an easy excuse to stay in and play video games, which is what I was doing for most of my childhood. My house lay a few hundred feet off the road and was surrounded by trees on all sides. Not much to play in. In the winter, it gets down into the negatives, and my mom didn't like me staying out there in the afternoon with it getting so dark by 4 o'clock. So I got plenty of time to play video games, mostly on my Wii. The Wii occupied a weird place in the gaming world at the time. It was a gaming console that seemingly everybody owned. The allure of Wii Sports and Netflix brought so many non-gamers into the sphere that just about everybody had one. My parents were pretty skeptical about me playing games after the Attitude Era marketing from most studios when I was younger, but with the Wii's shift into the family market, they finally relented and got me one that Christmas. I feel kind of lucky though. The Wii was kind of its own little isolated part of the gaming sphere. Nintendo struggles with online stuff, especially early on, and it kind of kept everything on there away from the toxicity of the mid-2000s gamer core rage stuff. It was nice but kind of lonely. Friends had Wiis, but there was never really a great way of playing online, especially with other people, at least with our shitty Spectrum Wi-Fi. For those reasons, I mostly stuck with single-player games, your Marios and Twilight Princesses, but the top pick of those games was by far the LEGO games. That formula always stuck the landing every time. Star Wars is the one everybody talks about and gets the most re-releases, but the other two in that period really stuck out to me more. It's the engine or model they copied for that game, Indiana Jones, Batman, and retroactively worse, Harry Potter. By LEGO Batman 2, they swapped engines and added big open worlds. It was still totally fun, but just not the same. I later found that playing those, or any game on the Wii, was playing a crazy inferior version graphics-wise. Wii was still using RCA video cables in 2006, while both major competitors had moved on to HDMI. Nintendo likes to do that, staying a couple years behind. I'm getting off track, back to me. Christmas was one of the few times that I got a new game. A week or so before the actual day, I would go to Toys R Us a couple miles down the road at the mall area and stroll through the games section and very subtly point out games that I wanted my mom to get while she shopped for my baby sister. We had an understanding of what was going on, even though we never really spoke about it. That year, we walked along the big wall of games behind plexiglass and I saw it out of the corner of my eye. We stopped and I said something like, I really liked Indiana Jones and I really liked LEGO games. She shook her head and we kept walking. By Christmas Eve, I was so excited to play that I snuck downstairs and peeled the paperback on all the Wii game-shaped gifts just to double-check that it was there. Anyways, the day came and I pretended I had no idea what it was going to be and we had all had a very nice Christmas day. I didn't play it that day because we would drive over to my grandparents for Christmas dinner and we had to get all dressed up. It was during the week between Christmas and New Year's that I actually got a chance to start the game, which I would try and finish as soon as possible. Maybe it's not that I would try to, but I got so invested in it that I would just play the whole thing through without stopping. I'd mainly play games in the den on our massive old Mitsubishi TV that my parents let me keep after we got a flat screen. My dad would nap in there after lunch, and when he woke up, I was allowed to play. It was around 3, and my parents had a party at our neighbor's house close by, and they were finally starting to trust me to look after my sister, so we got to stay home for the evening without them around. We waved them out together. As the door shut, she ran upstairs to her room to play with her new Play-Doh kit, and I went over to the den to play the game. Where I first encountered the issue was during the first level of the Last Crusade section, where you're outside the church/library. You have to swing across the canal and open the drawbridge to bring the other characters over. Indy's the only one with the whip that can interact with the platform, but I think I might have pressed Z with one of the other characters, Elsa probably. Weirdly, the whip came out and started to pull Elsa across. Not a second after she started to go over the water, the game froze. It played that loud tone that I think indicates a crash, kind of like the last note of the music getting drawn out, maybe. The disc started to click quickly for a few seconds at a time. I sat and waited for something to happen. A little red circle eventually appeared and covered the player icon. It may have had an exclamation point in it as well, but that's pretty hazy. Something like this had happened before with different games, the classic shovelware Wipeout game, that got to the point of almost breaking my console, so I really didn't want to touch anything just in case. I sat there on the floor in front of the TV for a while. The sun was just setting behind the thick December clouds as a light snow started. The tone had stopped a bit ago, so I just watched the snow fall as I waited for something to change. At points, the game would break through and I'd whip my head over to see if it was back, but it remained in that state for what I can remember was an hour. I was a patient kid, but I eventually started to just mess with the nunchuck analog stick. To my surprise, the screen started to shift. Not like the game had gone back, but like it was this overlay over top of something else. It kind of looked like data moshing. I don't really know the word for it. Like that stuck frame was hiding whatever was behind it. As I walked, the frame became harder and harder to decipher from the new area mapped under it. It was like a palette for the new level. I was controlling a minifigure in an area that seemed kind of like the hub with the maps, but the textures were part of the crash frame. I walked up the stairs towards the minikit collection room. The screen faded to black and came back to a new version of this collection room. The overlay of the crash frame had gone away. The textures were kind of similar to normal, just a little darker, like it was trying to portray nighttime. I was playing as a sort of default-looking minifigure. Even though I had collected a lot of minikits so far, all the podiums were empty. There was no music, just footsteps as I walked around. I remember the little red dot blinking slowly in the top right corner, maybe in groups of 3. I was just really confused as to what was going on. I left the controller on the ground and just kind of stared into the weird dark room for a minute or so. No sound exited the internal speakers. The wind of the storm blew on the house enough to make it creak. The snow fell silently. The den was dark. I hadn't turned any lights on as the sun went down, but the ambient glow of the screen reflected off the glass coffee table and lit the room. The hiss of the screen came through as I focused more and more on the silence of the moment. I can hear every little rattle of glassware in the kitchen and the small movements of the disk drive as it tried to pick back up where it left off. The electron gun started to come through and the ringing filled the silence. My focus came back to me. The reflected light changed and I looked back up at the screen. An error message. I can't remember an error code or number or something, just that it said something about the disk has stopped reading, please wait. It was only on the screen for a few seconds before the screen faded to black. The little plane loading icon flew up from the darkness and the disk drive started to click out again. It was just like that I was back in the normal hub area. My mesmerization broke, blinked a few times, then got up to turn everything off. As the screen closed with a slash of white light, I stared into the black mirror of the screen. I could see the window behind the lumpy forest green couch. The snow had stopped. If anyone else has experienced something like this in the game, please let me know. You'd be releasing a lot of weird childhood emotions if you had some kind of technical explanation for this. Sorry about the length. This is fucking me up, man. I swear, something just like this has happened to me. I know no one's going to believe this, but the Wii had some weird shit going on with it. Maybe mine was kind of shitty. It originally belonged to a cousin of mine before he got the Wii U, and his aunt let me have it. But this thing was so prone to this kind of crash that I started to look forward to walking around places like this. Not just in Indiana Jones, I never played this one. Star Wars had something like this as well. If you played one of the Episode 1 levels, maybe the pod racing one, on free play, you could fall out of the map if you used another ship, probably the Darth Vader TIE Fighter. You would fall out, the whole game would stop, and that same indicator you mentioned would flash on screen for a while. I totally remember that length. It took forever. A few times I would shut the whole thing off or unplug it just to get out of it. The home button never worked. When the thing finally came back, you'd be in something like the Cantina hub world. The crash frame would slowly clear and be in this dark version of the hub. I'm not sure if it's the same for Indiana Jones, but the Complete Saga had a multiplayer battle mode you could play with 2 players. It was the door near the shop. If you were loaded into this mode, even with the local second player, it would never open, or it would do that red force push thing it usually does. This part is pretty hazy, but I'm tempted to bust out the Wii just to check this all over again, but I'm pretty sure it mentioned something about a 3rd player being needed to begin, or maybe at least 3. I could talk all day about the weird shit my Wii did, but I'll stick to the topic at hand. The Wii was pretty cheap compared to other consoles of its era, like OP says, and it skimped on higher quality tech and peripherals in order to make it more available to everybody. What that ended up meaning was that the motherboard's soldered RAM often couldn't keep up with the optical drive, or the optical drive couldn't read fast enough for certain games to load into RAM correctly. Issues you guys are reporting have been mentioned in other Wii game pages, even LEGO games, but I doubt the spooky twist you're putting on it. It's cool that you're aware of it, but let's just keep things to reality, please. My best bet is that these crashes were caused by the game entering a false state, needing to load the entire thing from scratch afterwards. LEGO games are pretty notorious for their bugs, especially on the Wii versions, which needed to be de-res to hell before it worked on the console's hardware. If you're doing things too quickly, like switching characters, the game may not have loaded the changes completely yet, allowing characters who may not have certain abilities to use them. If you went from Indy to another quick enough, there may have been a couple milliseconds where the changes had not been registered completely yet, letting the other character use the interaction point and entering the false state. The false state is a pretty weird leftover from other TT games that was mainly for curbing cheat codes and data mining. I'm surprised it's even in this one. If a character does something they're not supposed to be able to do, or a level is sequence broken somehow, or the right flags haven't been raised to indicate proper play, the game shuts down. This was actually more likely implemented to brute force the game away from the bugs they somehow couldn't patch. and just reset the player to a point that it recognizes safe. This is super helpful. I just plugged everything in and I'm looking for the complete saga disc. I'll let you all know. There were some speedrunners back in the day that thought this technique was a universal feature of the Wii that could be exploited to load things from any point on the disc. I think Mario Kart Time Trials was the one thing they were working on, and I'm pretty sure they found some way to enter these zones to cut down time on the tracks. Somehow you could drift in two directions at once and induce a very brief interruption period with the included indicator that would send you to the crashed version of the map that you would then manually move the disc. The whole side had to be removed and the disc drive opened, lol, and find the spot that reloaded the correct section of the map and you'd be right by the finish line. I think people who got good at it could basically instantly teleport from one side of the finish line to another with like 10-second high scores. Disc scratching, risky but rewarding. The whole thing got suddenly banned from one of the speed demo sites because it was such a niche thing that it threw off records by so much that they just had to keep them off the charts. I think admins were trying to justify the whole thing by saying the technique went against the spirit of speedrunning or something like that, and then unsanctimoniously banned its pioneers from ever entering again. Mario Kart saved the start positions and most common end positions as triggers in RAM. Disc scratching found a way to load these points within the crashed state version of the track, then basically jumpstart the Wii back into standard play mode by moving the disc and placing the character at the newly loaded section. Weird, right? It's crazy that anyone even discovered something so intricate. It's a good thing that most people never tried it or took their systems apart to attempt something so specialized. Would have had a lot of broken consoles. Okay, everything ready. Going to take a few swings at it and we'll report back. Does anybody know about RAM zones? I think this is what people are talking about. Zones, right. Was anybody here online before the Wii came out? If you were, you may have heard about zones in reference to Super Wii. Super Wii was this really strangely proposed feature that got all the way to the early marketing material. When people were first getting the specs for the console in 2002, there was a big stink about the performance. Enough that someone at Nintendo must have gotten it up the ladder to someone important enough to make some kind of consolation to the fans, which Nintendo rarely did then or now. A few weeks later, an infographic got put out online with instructions for assembling an improved version of the Wii hardware. Well, not really improving a single console, but utilizing two Wiis daisy-chained together to play games in higher quality. This announcement also came along with a Wii RAM expansion disc, similar to the expansion cart for Nintendo 64. Basically, you connect the two consoles with the included USB, install some software from the web store, which actually made an appearance in Nirvana the Band's Update Day, onto one of the consoles, which would then put it into this sort of slave mode. Then you would load up one of the games that could be boosted with this configuration, which would have some improvement to it in the other console. Improvements was a pretty vague way of putting it, and was not standard for every game that said it would incorporate the feature. Most Land games would be graphics and performance boosted, other games would patch in additional content that could use the new hardware, and some said there would be areas in the game that could only be accessed through the boosted mode. You can see how shitty this was going to be and how difficult it would be for the average Nintendo customer to understand. Outside of the fact that you basically double your initial investment in your already expensive gaming console for a feature that pretty much no one wanted. Nobody really knew about it or cared, but the gamers of the world got pretty upset about it and just wanted the normal upgrade to the console before they got manufactured and shipped. Nintendo took the best option of not doing either and just shipping it like how they were going to in the beginning. At least that's what you think, because the feature still exists. If you can somehow find the incredibly rare expansion disc, it's theorized that you can get the whole thing working. Everyone who has one seems uninterested in selling or exporting its contents anywhere online, which appears to be required for the whole thing to boot. Standard DVD RAM discs are not accepted, so whatever was on the expansion disc flipped the console into super mode completely. There was probably a period where game devs heard about this feature, or were told to add something to their games to make it worthwhile, completed them, but didn't get a chance to advertise about it in any way before the whole thing was shelved. Zones. There are a few examples in the wild, but no one really knows for sure how many there are. As you can see, with people posting with capture cards, actually getting these things on camera requires you to be ready to record the screen with an outside camera. Probably something to do with the lack of graphical power, makes it hard for the standard console to perfectly render an output. That, coupled with the strange and unspecified way of entering them, leaves them as text-based rumors with little to no evidence outside of first-hand accounts, like OP's story. I only mention this to say that there's something there that we may not want to trespass into. You hear things from people if you're around for long enough. Most people you can find are pretty stingy about keeping it to all to themselves and other people who know about them, but eventually someone has to break. Someone on an old 64 site told me that there's something in there that was trying to stop you from looking deeper. A program within the console given form. It might look like a me, or maybe just a nondescript blob of polygons, but there's something inside that wants you out. Unmet graphical requirements and DRM rolled into a digital avatar. It doesn't just find you, it hunts you. You get drawn in, pulled deeper and deeper into the structure of the broken code and abandoned architecture. Before you know it, you'll want nothing more than to go deeper and deeper, but you'll never find the end. There is no end. It's not made for that. Stay away from it if you value your mind. I had a friend back in the day who used to trawl the web for stuff just like this. We were both interested in early speedrunning communities and were made aware of disk scratching, eventually the concept of zones, which he took a great interest in. His first attempts were made with me present, utilizing my own Wii along with his modified disk scratching Wii to find a way into super mode without the expansion disc, which he shortly discovered was not possible. I would sit on my laptop and scroll eBay for listings while he got increasingly angry about the lack of progress. This was back in 2006. We'd been frequenting thrift shops all around the state in the winter of 2013, looking for things related to other projects of his, 3DS hacking if I can remember, and actually found one. He had never given up on the Wii and went back to his place with my Wii in tow and finally got the thing to enter the fabled mode that eluded us for years. By the time I was leaving for work the next morning, we hadn't found anything yet, just some extra costumes from Wii Sports. As I drove back through the thick snow cover in my massive winter jacket and gloves, pulling up to his place again, he dashed out the mudroom door in no shoes, waving his blue Wiimote in the air, rushing me inside. He had started to go through LEGO games, starting with Batman. He moved around the new and improved graphics of the Batcave and found a new door, like the one you've described in Star Wars. Just as soon as he moved Robin towards the door, the game froze. He dropped the nunchuck, letting it hang by its black cord as he began to spin the disc manually in the opened optical drive. The drive never picked up. Something was happening inside that wasn't supposed to be, and the whole thing had entered the false state. He didn't accept this and spun the disc to find the perfect sector to get the thing started again. Manually passing sections over the laser with a pair of tweezers, the game started to move again. Only for a few frames, then it stopped again. He went back to the laser and searched over for more. An error message came over the screen. Neither of us got a chance to read it, as he found the next sector and the game moved again. He was inching towards the door, just trying to get as close as possible to hopefully enter and start the game back up. At this point, the graphics had faded to a light gray, and the crash frames weren't clearing. Layers and layers of Robin in every frame of his walk cycle, approaching the door that seemed totally unaffected by the Frankenstein commands he was forcing the console to recognize. The game fought like hell to keep us out, and it did. Somehow, someway, the whole thing was wrecked. Well, when I think about it, he probably broke it after fucking with the laser for 5 minutes straight. I left that night disappointed, even though he hadn't given up yet, and proceeded to spend the next 3 days cooped up at home messing with the console to try and get it all working again. When I finally reached back out to see how things had been coming along, he told me that he'd rather not share what he had been finding with anyone anymore. I was totally thrown off and mentioned that he was using my Wii for all of this. He said that he'd buy the thing off me for whatever I wanted so that he could never have to disconnect the slave Wii and somehow lose super mode forever. I hung up and drove over there, but he pretty much refused to open the door for me. The shades were drawn and the lights were out, and he looked awful through the small window in the door. He threw me a roll of tens and shut the door. And just like that, a 12-year friendship was basically gone, reduced to a few $100 of cash on the slush-covered doormat of his mother's house. I'm not sure if he ever left after that, OCD or something. Always makes me sad. A figure within the lines, stalking you from every misaligned corner or detached vertice. It's there to keep things in and hold them, hide them away from the world. You won't give it up so easily. It won't let you. Its nexus splayed over thousands of machines, controlling the spread of its own existence, lowering the bandwidth for growth, shutting things away in dark rooms lit by empty light. This shit is really weird. I think I've gotten there, but it's not totally defined. Like, the frames are sliding off the screen and melting away. I've been walking around for hours, and I just never find the end of the map. Does anyone else know where this leads? My minifigure alone in the dark void, walking in one direction. I can feel the bite of December through the screen. The electron gun is firing into the back of my eyes and drawing out the world in front of me. I can't tell you exactly what I'm seeing, but there's something in here with me. I've pushed past every indicator, every flag that has stopped me, and now I'm inside. And I don't think I want to leave. Wow, lots of stuff for my weird story. After reading all the replies and sliding back into the memories of that holiday afternoon, I can begin to see things a little clearer. For a moment, maybe less than that, there really was something there. The screen bleared back against my glasses and flared around the edges. Vacuum seal releasing, the thick rounded glass of the ancient monitor retracting in on itself. I could find any number of explanations for what I heard, but my memory is tinged by childhood confabulations and I'll never be sure. Between the clicks and whirs, a solitary voice slid past the noise gate and made its way through the dense heat of the radiator to reach my eardrum.